over to Dr. Brown.
Yeah, as you may recall, when we were doing the B section of the board policies, this policy was still under review with the committee. The committee has sent this back to now the board for the second reading. And the part that they were still working on, I'm going to read that aloud now, because it was the part that they wanted very clear so that all board members and the public would understand it. So it is on this first page, and it's down at the bottom, employment, volunteering prohibited. And remember, this is in relation to board members. So it says, a board member may not receive pay as a teacher of a public school or otherwise be employed in the same school district where he or she serves. This includes employment handled through third-party entities such as temporary agencies that place substitute teachers. A board member is not permitted to serve in a volunteer position in the district where it involves their interacting with a particular student, group of students, or class of students, and where the activity could impact or be perceived to impact the students, group of students, or class of students' academic performance or achievement, such as tutoring, reading, or assisting a teacher or administrator in any manner. The only exception is after-school activities such as athletics and athletic events.
Okay, thank you very much. Board members, you have heard what the new policy that's been proposed by the committee says. What is the pleasure of the board with regards to a second reading on that particular policy?
Madam Chair, at this time, I ask that we approve the new changes to the BCB board member committee, board member conflict of interest.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor that we approve the second reading of the policy BCB, board member conflict of interest, in particular employment and volunteering prohibited. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion on the floor and a second. Is there any discussion? Yes, sir.
Madam Chair, so does this, I mean, I'm trying to read what you were saying there. So this says that you can't volunteer, or you can't volunteer if your association with the student or the group of students could affect how their academic performance is graded or something. So it's not saying that you can't volunteer, but it's, again, I don't know if I'm, but you can, but I guess not in a way that your influence as a board member could affect their, I guess, grades or.
Right.
Okay.
That's exactly what the policy reads, because, you know, as a board member, if a board member is, let's say, tutoring a child, and it's a particular child, for whatever reason, that's been asked by the teacher, and you have a classroom of 15 students and only one child
Right.
is being tutored, then that child it can be perceived that that child would have, you know, an academic advantage
Right.
because of the tutoring.
Okay.
So that's what
Right.
that's what that particular piece of the policy is referring to. But you can still volunteer if you wanted to, you know, come in and,
Read or.
well, not reading, because that's the same thing. When you're tutoring someone or reading, helping a student become a better reader, that still affects their academic.
Let's say if you go in and say, read to the class
Yeah, if you, I would imagine.
as a whole.
Well, that's a good question. Reading to the class as a whole versus reading to a particular student. Right here, we have particular student, groups of students, class of students, where the activity could impact or be perceived to impact the students, blah, 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 so on and so forth. And we give examples of such as tutoring and reading. So I would imagine, again, that if it's a group of students where we're looking at, because you can, if, let's say you go into a class and you're reading or helping with reading a group of students, that group of students would still potentially have an advantage over another group of students in a different class. But if you wanted to volunteer, let's say, you know, maybe they're doing a coloring fun day or something, and you wanted to provide coloring pages, that's something totally different. Or you're volunteering in a capacity that simply does not affect them academically,
Okay.
that would be okay. Any other questions? Comments? You comfortable?
Yep, I'm
Okay.
comfortable.
All right. Now you made me lose my train of thought.
You just got to approve it.
We have a discussion. If you're in favor of approval and moving forward with this particular second reading of policy BCB, please signal by saying aye. Aye. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, the ayes have it, motion carries, and we are now down to number 5, which is the first reading of the new policies for section A. And I will turn that over to Dr. Brown.
Okay, so section A deals with foundations and basic commitments. And I'm going to start with policy AA, and for the purposes of our audience listening in tonight and those in attendance, I'll read off each title of each policy. You've had a chance to review them, and then I'll take it from there. So AA is school district legal status. This policy establishes the foundation and legal authority of the school district. Section AC, non-discrimination, equal opportunity. This policy is required by law to establish the position of the district as a non-discriminatory public educational entity. In accordance with the law, it includes a section on resolving complaints. District contact information has been added. Okay. Policy ACB is educational equity. This policy specifically addresses equity in all aspects of the educational program. Policy ACE, public service animals. This policy establishes guidelines for members of the public permitted to utilize service animals in district buildings and on district property. It coincides with the service animal policy set forth in sections G, I, and J. We'll get more to those as we go through more policies. Policy ADA and ADAR deals with school district goals and objectives. This policy and its associated rule establishes the board's vision and the basic structure for developing a district strategic plan and school renewal plans with updates as required by law. The mission statements for our new consolidated district, previously approved on our consolidated board, and our vision statements have been included in this policy. ADB, drug and alcohol-free workplace and schools. This policy establishes the basic structure in place to ensure the board's vision of a workplace and learning environment free of drugs and alcohol. Policy ADC, tobacco-free school district. This is the comprehensive 100% tobacco-free policy establishing the basic structure in place to ensure the board's vision of a workplace and learning environment free of tobacco and alternative nicotine products.
Madam Chairman, do we have discussion now if we have a question about something, or do we do it at the end?
We're gonna wait until after
Okay.
yeah.
That's fine.
Policies GBED and JICG will correspond with this information. Policy ADD, face coverings. It's important to note that this is a temporary policy when needed, outlining the use of face coverings due to pandemics such as COVID-19. Bamberg 2 and Bamberg 1 had these temporary policies in place when COVID-19 hit, and we will have this policy again in case there is another pandemic or COVID-19 resurges. And policy ADF, district wellness. This policy establishes the basic structure for enhancing the learning and development for lifelong wellness practices.
Okay. All right, board members, the committee has gone through these policies, and it is the recommendation of the committee that the board accept and approve policy section A as a first reading. So what is the pleasure of the board?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
at this time, I make a motion that we approve policies AA through ADF.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any discussion?
I have one question.
Yes, sir?
Under ADB, under the tobacco-free district policy,
Mm-hmm.
on the second page of it, or visitors, volunteers, and members of the public. The very first, offense there is verbal request to leave your school property. I would think that they would be afforded the same, opportunity as a worker, a staff member, or a student with a verbal reprimand, for your first offense, and then be asked to leave the property. I mean, if somebody comes to a ball game, they don't know, and they are vaping or something, and they didn't see the sign, or maybe we don't even have a sign, at the baseball field or something, that you would go up to them and, verbally reprimand them first to correct them, that you wouldn't, send them right off the property is what it shows.
Well, we did talk about that
Yeah.
as a committee. We talked about that, and we have not only current postings, but we're also doing some additional signage at the gates on the football field fences and things of that nature. But we did talk about that as a committee, and the committee still made the recommendation that we have the policy as it's been written.
Okay.
And it does say, it goes a little bit further into enforcement to kind of address some of that, Mr. Hires, under ABC. It says that students, staff, parents, legal guardians, contract workers, volunteers, visitors, are subject to disciplinary actions for violations, including but not limited to. So, and typically the way we do enforce that is if we do see someone
Okay.
like a visitor or at an athletic event, is, we have our resource officers that's doing security there. They do ask them to put it out or get rid of it.
Okay.
But if they don't comply with the appropriate signage, like Ms. Walker is saying, then we'll be asked to leave the
Okay,
property.
that's fine.
Okay,
I just didn't want you to kick them right out.
Question, Madam Chair.
hold on just a second. Naomi, you had a question?
It wasn't about that, it was a, different one for,
Sure.
policy ADF, district wellness.
Okay,
So my first question was about the schools will not use foods or beverages as rewards for academic performance. It's, right before water on the first page
we're on the first page.
of district wellness,
Uh-huh. Food and beverage.
policy ADF. So right above where it says water, it starts, the sentence starts, schools will not use foods or beverages as rewards for academic performance or good behavior. So I know that like normally like you do maybe like if, all the fourth grade, if everybody is reading, or if you read so many books or something like that. So we're saying we would not do things of that sort anymore, like where you have like a ice cream party or something like that.
That's a good question, because they have done that in the past. And usually when they do that, they do inform parents and get kind of like parent permission first, and also permission from the administrators. That is a good question, because if this is something that the board wishes to be changed, we need to make the recommendations for second reading.
How does the board feel about that?
I personally didn't think that that's, I feel, when I was in school, like, that's something you look forward to, like, it's an extra incentive for, like, if kids normally read 3 books, and then these other kids take the extra time to read 10 books or something like that, and you get a prize, like an ice cream treat, or, something, or a party or something like that for doing so. I think that's a good incentive and a way for teachers to be able to use something like that to incentivize them to do more.
The purpose of this policy is to make sure that what we offer, it's the healthiest choice that can be. This is designed to gear children towards healthy choices. So if I can, Madam Chair, make a suggestion that would work here. All of this has to be approved by school level administrators, because we work with our food services director to make sure that, and we also have to check to make sure certain children don't have allergies, certain children don't have like dairy intolerances, those kinds of things. So I think maybe we could go to the end of that sentence and put without prior approval from administration. If
That way
that,
we can leave it in.
without prior approval
That'll be
from
fine.
administration.
Okay, without, if everyone's okay with that, we can do that without prior approval. Administrator,
From administration.
administration.
You want me to amend the motion
Um,
with that correction?
it probably wouldn't be a bad idea.
Madam Chairman, I move that we amend the motion to approve Section A by adding to Section ADF with approval of the administration.
Okay. Before I talk about a second, let me ask this, and I appreciate you doing that, but who made the motion to, okay, then the amendment of the motion really needs to, I'm sorry, John, it needs to
Okay.
come from her.
Okay.
Are you comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay, so if you can just amend your motion.
So Madam Chair, at this time, I'd like to amend the motion to approve, to include without prior approval. So
Okay,
Madam-
so that's just on that particular policy of ADF, which is the district wellness, under section food and beverage availability. We're adding to the very first sentence, a comma without prior approval from administration. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, a second?
Second.
Motion on the floor and second. Any further discussion?
I just had one more just
I'm
question
sorry.
about the, in that same, policy about the district wellness committee,
Mhm.
like, is that currently something that's in place that we do, or?
Yes, it is. We have wellness committees at each school, and they're led by our school nurses.
I have a question.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Ms. First, the signs that we're gonna be putting up, those signs will be in place as of July.
They're in place now.
They're in place now, okay.
Mr. Beard put up the signs in Denmark. Now, I personally have not ridden the campuses, but I could do that tomorrow. Because I had personally been out and went to each campus to see where they were at. I know Mr. Beard's got his, and I can ride tomorrow and see where they're at. Mr. Ott put his up, but then he requested more to hang on the fences at the entrance of the, like, football stadium. I don't know if he's put his up or not, but I know everybody has the signs. And we've ordered what everybody has requested.
Mr. Rock put his up at all the entrances of the schools
You
here,
see.
parking lot, and, but he did ask for additional signs to
And
be
they
hung
came
on
today.
fences into our facilities, coming into our facilities.
And he got those.
And when we enter our, gyms, is there a sign, is there gonna, because I feel like there needs to be a sign for entrance of the gym, because I have seen cigarette butts all over the place.
Hold on for a second. There's not a bad idea, but I think, you're talking about from Saturday, for example, or just
not
in
in
period?
period.
Okay,
Period.
because I was gonna say, I know that, there's other things happening at the district, currently that could account for some that we may have seen over the weekend,
No,
but
this
it
is-
sounds like you're talking overall. It's
Overall.
probably not a bad idea.
Bamberg and
Because I know. And she hadn't been there.
Okay. Okay.
I'll get more signs.
Any other comments? Okay, I do have one comment, and I just want, this is really probably directed at Dr. Brown and Jessica. Under the ACE policy, page 3, the last one with the bolded section of complaint process, I thought we had added not just the student services director, I thought we also added the district 504 coordinator to that piece of it, or no? Or is that one and the same? I mean, what are we doing?
We were gonna keep it in line with the two policies.
Okay,
That we're
That's-
gonna mirror those policies.
that's all I needed. Thank you very much. All right, I think we are ready to, I think I'm done with that, yeah. So we've got a motion on the floor, we have a second, we've had a discussion. We did the amendment, so if you're in favor of this, please signal by saying aye. Aye. Any opposition? Hearing none, the ayes have it, and the first reading is approved. We are now down to item number 6, which is the first reading of the BCSD, which is Bamberg County School District New Policy, Section C. And I will turn that over to Dr. Brown again. Can you hold on for just a second? I've got to get my policies back in order.
I'm glad you said that because
Yeah,
I'm
hold
the
yeah,
same
hold on
thing.
before you go. That's there. Are we
You
ready?
ready? I'm ready. I was waiting on you. I'm sorry, Ms. Walker.
I'm sorry, okay, go ahead.
You're fine.
It's a lot of
All right.
paperwork to keep up with.
So section, it is that. So section C is general school administration. And so again, I will start off with reading the title and giving a brief description. And we'll ask the board for first read. All right, so policy CA, administration goals, priority objectives. This policy establishes the district's administrative goals and objectives. Policy CB, school superintendent. This policy establishes the board's vision for the role of the superintendent. Policy CBA, qualifications of the superintendent. This policy establishes the basic structure for the qualifications of the superintendent. CBC, this policy establishes the basic structure for duties of the superintendent. CBC, I'm sorry. Policy CBD, superintendent's contract. This policy establishes the basic structure for the contractual relationship between the board and the superintendent and includes a section about the board's annual review of the superintendent's contract. Policy CBI, evaluation of superintendent. This policy establishes the basic structure for the board evaluation of the superintendent that ensures board accountability to the community. It includes statements on adjustments to the superintendent's contract and rate compensation. Policy CC, administrative organization. This policy establishes the basic structure of the administrative organization for the district. Policy CCA and E for exhibit, organizational chart. This policy establishes the district's organizational chart and the administrative at school and district administrative levels. And we have inserted the organizational chart as the exhibit. Policy CCB, line and staff relations. This policy establishes the basic structure for lines of authority within the district. Policy CFA, school principals and building administrators. This policy establishes the basic structure for the administrative operations of the schools. Policy CFC, assignment and transfer of school administrators. This policy establishes the basic structure for the assignment and transfer of school administrators. Policy CH, policy implementation. This policy establishes both the vision and the basic structure for implementation of board policy. And CM, school district annual reports. This policy establishes the basic structure for issuing annual reports. It includes a section on making the annual reports available to the public.
Okay, board members, you've heard an outline of the proposed policies for section C, and the committee did meet. We went over the policy in detail, and we are making the recommendation to the board that they be approved as a first reading. So I'll entertain a motion.
Yes, Madam Chair,
Yes.
the motion that we receive as first reading section C, general school administration,
Okay, we have a motion on the floor that we receive this as a first reading for section C. Is there a second?
Second?
Motion on the floor and second, any discussion? Okay, I do have something on that one, which is the superintendent's contract, which is CBD. CBD, superintendent's contract. If you go down to the second to the last paragraph that starts with the board will review the superintendent's contract each year. I thought on that piece, when you go further down, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, if you go down 4 lines that starts with specified date in his or her contract, I thought that we changed the will not to may.
You did.
Well, I'm sorry, let me correct that. I'm not saying that I think that's what we did, that's what we did. So that just needs to be corrected.
We'll make that correction.
And, let's see, I think that was all that I had on that particular one. And I think that's an easy one. That's just a matter of words. I think we're okay on that one. If you all are ready to vote, we have a motion on the floor in a second. We have discussion. Is there any more? Hearing none, if you're in favor of accepting this as the first reading for section C, please signal by saying aye. Aye. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, the ayes have it, and the motion carries. Something that I want to mention maybe as we're going into the J policy, because that was a fairly large section for us to go through, and a very large percentage of it also is state mandated. But there may be some minor corrections as we go through the policy, so perhaps if you want to consider when you make the motion to approve it, that you might want to consider making the motion with necessary corrections, so that we don't have to continue to go back amending the motions, not the emotions, but amending motions.
You want us to ask our questions during the initial?
I think if it's a situation where it's just like a typo, I think we're okay to interrupt that process. But if we're talking about word changes or sentence changes, that may need to occur, I think that's what's going, I know that's what's going to happen in this policy, because I got a bunch of yellow stickies here. But I think the proper way to do it, according to Robert's rules, would still be to make the motion a second, and then we can discuss it. But when we get to when we start to make the motion, perhaps knowing that we're going into this, there may be some corrections you may want to consider putting, to include any necessary corrections, because there probably will be some beyond today's meeting. So we are now down to item number 7, which is the first reading of the section J of the Bamberg County School District new policies, and I will turn that over to you again. And if you could move a little slower on this one, because
Yes,
we
ma'am.
have so many.
It is a lot, and I'm gonna
Yes.
slow down.
No, you're doing fine, but I just,
Just
Yeah.
stop me if y'all need. I do want to draw the board's attention to the agenda, and before we get started onto the chart or going through policy by policy, Section J is probably the largest section besides Section I, which is instruction in the board policy manual. So this did take a lot of time on the committee's part, reviewing line by line and word by word. But we could have 10 sets of eyes looking at this, and we might miss something. So please do, it's worth all of our look to make sure that we get every word right and to your liking. But I would like to say that on the agenda, if you would please make a note that policy, see how it starts with on the agenda 7A? But on page 2, look for AAA, which is JICJB. We are not recommending that policy, and it's not included.
Which one is it? AAA, JIC, JB?
Yes, ma'am,
Okay.
student tracking safety devices.
Okay,
We don't put tracking devices on students.
okay.
Okay. Policy UUU and VVV and WWW. That's JJIE rule, and JJIE exhibit. All 3 of those policies deal with drug testing athletes. The committee is not recommending those policies.
Okay.
Okay. And then on the 3rd page of the agenda, it's 3rd, 4th. Policy CCCCC, that's 5 Cs, which is JLIE, student automobile use. And the very next one, letters DDDDD, JLIE exhibit, student automobile use parental permission form. The committee's also not recommending these policies.
So we're not gonna have an automobile policy?
So I just wanted to bring your attention, the committee did not recommend these. We,
What? Oh, from drivers.
yeah, there was an old policy, Bamberg 1 had it, Bamberg 2 did not.
Okay.
Bamberg 1 had an old policy on the books that allowed students to drive to Career Center. There was a really bad accident involving 2 students, and after that, they rescinded that policy, and students were no longer allowed to drive. They had to ride a bus to Code and
Okay.
back from Code.
And we still have something that addresses students driving to school and,
They can drive to school, we just
Yeah.
weren't letting them drive to school. and
right,
leave
but
to
I'm
go
saying,
to
is there a
Career
policy
Center.
on that somewhere, or we, okay,
Yeah, they can go
That's
drive.
a parent decision.
okay, all right,
I thought that was driver training, but yeah, that's.
okay, that's what that is, all right, very
So
good.
just wanted to note that those were policies the committee did not recommend, so not bringing them to the board. Okay, so now we're gonna jump into the policies the committee is recommending for the board's first reading. Are we ready? JA, student policies, goals, and objectives. This policy establishes the district's goals and objectives in student policy making. JB, equal educational opportunity, non-discrimination. This is the district non-discrimination policy applicable to students with information on the resolution of discrimination complaints. JBAB, student gender and orientation. This policy establishes the district's vision for ensuring non-discrimination in matters involving student gender and their orientation. JCA, assignment of students to schools. This policy establishes the district's method of assigning students to schools and covers related exceptions. Policy JE, JER, and JE exhibit form, student attendance. This policy establishes the district's expectations for student attendance. It also includes an administrative rule which covers student attendance for virtual and hybrid schedules, and that's applicable when schools are mandated to go virtual. And there's an exhibit form to elect non-attendance in kindergarten. Policy JB, entrance age. This policy establishes the district's entrance age requirements, which adheres to state law. JFAA and E for exhibit.
Can you stop for
Petition-
just a second?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm trying to catch up with you.
JEB was the last one.
Okay, you're at JEB,
I'm at JFAA now.
hold on.
JFAA.
I'm sorry, I'm working with committee section, and then the
I'm
section.
glad.
Yeah, so that's what I'm working with.
Thank you.
Okay, JF?
JFAA.
Got it.
And it also includes JFAAE, which is exhibit form. So it's like 3 pages. All right, this is admission of resident students. This policy establishes the district's admission criteria for resident students, meaning students residing in our county. JFAB, admission of non-resident students. This policy establishes the district's admission criteria for non-resident students. And at this point, I would like to highlight, and the committee asked me to highlight, because we are receiving a number of phone calls from parents in our county and outside of the county about whether or not the district will continue to accept out-of-district students and in-district transfers. And I would like to read that the part that says tuition establishes the district's policy on that. At the beginning, the policy reads, the district will follow applicable federal and state law with regard to all student admissions and student transfers into or out of the district. The superintendent will examine all inter-district student transfer requests and make recommendations to the board. Parents, legal guardians must obtain a written release from the student's home district annually. The board will not approve admission of a non-resident student if such admission would overcrowd our facilities of the district, exceed the established maximum enrollment in any of the classrooms or programs of the district, or in any way create a hardship upon the educational program as a result of this admission. The admission of any non-resident student will be for a period of 1 school year, and the non-resident student must reapply for admission the following year. In all cases, next paragraph, of non-resident student admissions, the parent or legal guardian must assume responsibility for transportation. And here's the important part, especially for the public to hear. The district may charge tuition to non-resident students seeking to enroll in district schools. The district will require payment of non-resident tuition prior to the beginning of the school year in which the student is enrolled. This policy will also apply to teachers who work in our district but reside outside of our district and wish to bring their children to our school. Per state law, they will be required to get a release to bring their children to school here every year. So just wanted to highlight a couple of things on that one. Policy JFABC and JFABCE for the exhibit. This is transfer students. This policy establishes the district's criteria for admission for inter-district and intra-district transfer students. And again, the committee has requested that I draw attention to the intra-district transfer section. Intra-district means transferring within the county, meaning if you reside in Denmark but wish to attend school in Bamberg, or if you reside in the city of Bamberg but wish to attend a school in Denmark, that is an intra-district student transfer request. The policy being recommended reads, students will attend schools in which they reside. Requests for intra-district transfers will be considered on a case-by-case basis. Requests must be made in writing to the superintendent or his or her designee for review and board approval at the next regularly scheduled board meeting. Intra-district student transfers will comply with board policy and state and federal law. Parents, legal guardians seeking an intra-district transfer may obtain a transfer request form from any school office or from the district office. The completed form should be submitted to the superintendent or designee for review. Also, for students requesting to transfer out of our district and attend in another district, when we are their home district, they must request release from us to attend school in another school district, and that request release should be submitted by April 30th for the ensuing school year. And of course, the district will not be responsible for paying any fees or tuitions to the receiving school system. Instances where students may be granted an intra-district transfer include post-secondary goals, meaning where the student has a certain post-career path and a program's being offered in one high school or the other that best meets their post-secondary goals. Because the student might have a medical or psychological need to attend a different school. They might be a victim of assault, abuse, harassment, or stalking. Or in cases where provision of special education services might be offered in one school where it's not being offered in another. Disciplinary transfers, children or wards of district staff, that's where staff might work in one town or the other. They can take their children to school with them where they work if they choose. And other miscellaneous administrative reasons. Also, I'd like to highlight the athletics. Students residing in one town or the other where a sport is not being offered at that school will be able to participate in a sport being offered at another school, if that's the case. But they must meet academic or athletic eligibility to participate in that sport like everyone else. So just a couple things I wanted to, the committee asked me to highlight to the board and for the public's hearing. All right. Policy J, everybody ready? Sorry. JFABD, JFABDR, and exhibits 1, 2, and 3 that go with that policy. That's admission of homeless students. This policy establishes the district's criteria for enrollment, school assignment, and other homeless student services, and it is in compliance with the McKinney-Vento Act and ensures an anti-discrimination and includes an anti-discrimination statement. Okay. Ready? JFABE, admission of English language learners and migrant students. This policy establishes the district's criteria for enrollment of English language learner and migrant students. JFABF, and it includes exhibits 1 and 2, students in foster care. This policy establishes the framework for addressing students in foster care, and I'd also like to mention this is in accordance with state and federal law. JFABG, equal opportunity for military students. This policy outlines the district's responsibilities under the Interstate Compact on Educational Opportunity for Military Children law. JFB, school choice. This policy establishes criteria for school choice based on persistently dangerous school designation. Additional school choice options the district offers may be included. J, H, and R, student absences and excuses. This policy establishes the framework for the district's attendance policy and truancy intervention system, and it's also in accordance with state law on attendance and truancy. J, H, C, B, and R. Release time for religious instruction. This policy establishes the framework for student participation in release time religious instruction programs for elective credit in accordance with state law. Policy JI. Everybody with me? Student rights and responsibilities. This policy establishes the framework for the rights enjoyed by students and the responsibilities that come with exercising those rights. JIAA and JIAA-R and Exhibits 1 and 2 all pertain to sexual harassment and retaliation in regards to students. This policy establishes the framework for handling sexual discrimination, harassment, and retaliation complaints related to students. This is all in accordance with Title IX, state policy and law. JIAB and JIAB-R with Exhibits 1 and 2, discrimination, oh, I'm sorry, that was the one I just did. So we're at JIB. Everybody with me?
Hold on a second, I need to turn the page.
So is that a JIAB-R?
Mm-hmm.
It's just got a lot of pages.
I'm ready. No, we're ready.
Okay. So JIAA was sexual harassment retaliation. JIAB was discrimination harassment. Both of them are in accordance with law. Now at JIB, student involvement in decision making. This policy establishes the board's vision for student involvement in district, school, and classroom level decision making. JICA and JICAR, student dress and student dress codes. This policy establishes the framework for the student's dress code. Also, the committee wishes me to remind the board that these policies will be, and these dress codes will be part of our student code of conduct handbooks at each school. JICDA and R, Code of Conduct. This outlines the district's code of conduct in matters relative to students. These two will be published in each school's code of conduct handbook for students.
Okay, slow down for just a second so I can catch up on my page turning.
Okay?
You were at
And you,
JICGA.
Yes, ma'am. And it's also, that includes JICDAR.
okay, hold on a second.
It's like 5 pages.
So you're at JICEA now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, hold on a second. Got it.
School-related student publications and productions. This policy establishes the framework for the distribution and performance of school-related student publications and productions. JICF, Secret Societies Gang Activity. This policy establishes the district's expectations regarding the prohibition of gang activity. JICFA, hazing. This policy establishes the district's expectations regarding hazing. JICFAA with Exhibit 1, intimidation, bullying, or harassment. This policy establishes the framework for addressing intimidation and bullying. Y'all ready? JICG, tobacco used by students. This policy establishes the district's expectations regarding a 100% tobacco-free environment relative to students. JICH, drug and alcohol use by students. This policy establishes the district's expectations regarding a 100% drug and alcohol-free environment. JICI, weapons in school. This policy establishes the district's expectations regarding a ban on any weapons on district property, absent exceptions provided by law. JICJ, possession, use of electronic communication devices in schools. This policy establishes the framework for students' possessions and use of cell phones or other electronic devices. JIE, JIF, JIG. Pregnant students, students with children, married students. This policy establishes the framework for ensuring full participation in the district's educational program for students who are pregnant, married, and/or who have children. JIH, JIHR, and exhibit. Student interrogation, searches, and arrest. This policy establishes the framework for handling student interrogation, searches, and arrests by local law enforcement. JIHC, JIHCR, and JIHC exhibit. Use of metal detectors. This policy establishes district guidelines for the use of metal detectors, when and where necessary. JII, Student Concerns, Complaints, and Grievances. This policy establishes the framework for the district's student grievance procedure. Title IX and Section 504 complaints have been incorporated in these policies. JIJ, Student Protests, Demonstrations, and Strikes. This policy establishes the framework for handling student protests, demonstrations, and strikes. JJ/JJA, JJJJAR with exhibits 1 and 2. That's like 5 pages, I think. That's student activities and organizations. This policy establishes the framework for student participations in activities and organizations. JJAB, Limited Open Forum. This policy establishes the framework for respecting students' First Amendment rights while establishing legal boundaries to minimize disruption to the school environment. JJE and JJER, Student Fundraising Activities. This policy establishes the framework for students' participation in fundraising activities. JJF, Student Activities Funds. This policy establishes the framework for students' activities funds. JJG, Contests for Students. This policy establishes the framework for community and outside agency contests for students. JJI, Interscholastic Athletics. This policy establishes the framework for district athletic programs with added information on participation of middle school students in those programs. JK, Student Discipline. This policy establishes an overview of the district's disciplinary philosophy. JKA, Restraint, Seclusion, and Intentional Physical Contact. This policy establishes the framework for the use of restraint, seclusion, and/or physical contact by district staff for safety reasons. It also includes language prohibiting the use of corporal punishment. JKD and JKDR, suspension of students. This policy establishes the framework for the suspension of students in accordance with the Code of Conduct. JKE and JKER, expulsion of students. This policy establishes the framework for the expulsion of students in accordance with Code of Conduct. JLA, student insurance coverage. This policy establishes the framework for students' insurance coverage. JLCC and JLCC with exhibit. Communicable and infectious diseases and conditions. This policy establishes the framework for addressing communicable and infectious diseases and conditions, including lice and bed bugs. JLCD, JLCDR, and JLCDE's exhibits 1, 2, and 3. Assisting students with medications. This policy establishes the framework for assisting students with medications. JLCDA and JLCDAR, individual health care plans, or IHPs. This policy establishes the framework for individual health care plans for students with special medical needs. JLCDB, use of epinephrine auto-injectors. This policy establishes the framework for utilizing both prescribed and emergency EPI-pens or EpiPens. JLCDC and JLCDCR, food allergies and special dietary needs. This policy establishes the framework for addressing student food allergies and special dietary needs. JLCDD and JLCDDR, service animals for students. This policy establishes the framework for students needing service animals. JLCE, first aid and emergency care. This policy establishes the framework for providing students with first aid and emergency care. Note the addition of language on do not resuscitate orders or DNRs based on state law. JLCEF, JLCEFR, and exhibit, concussions and student athletes. This policy establishes the framework for handling student athletes who sustain concussions. JLCF, school nurses. This policy establishes the role of school nurse. JLD, school counseling. This policy establishes the framework for the district's counseling program. JLDBB and JLDBBR, suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention. This policy establishes the framework for handling suicide and suicide risk in the district. JLF, student welfare. This policy establishes the requirements for mandated reporters of child abuse and neglect. JLIB, student dismissal precautions. This policy establishes the framework for ensuring students are only dismissed in accordance with parent legal guardian instructions and in compliance with any legal documents such as custody agreements or orders. JQ, fees, or student fees, fines, and charges. This policy establishes the framework for assessing student fees, fines, and charges. JRA, JRAR, and JRAR exhibits 1, 2, and 3. Student records. This policy establishes the framework for release and disclosure of student records. Those are the committee's recommendations for section J.
Okay. Well, I know it's a lot of information to have gone through prior to coming to the board meeting, as well as going through it here at the meeting. With these being the recommendations of the committee, I will now entertain a motion on the first reading of section J of the Bamberg County School District Policy Goals and Objectives.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
at this time, I make a motion that we approve the second reading of JA through J,
First reading.
the first reading of JA through JJJ with the necessary corrections should there be.
Okay,
Second.
you're talking about J.
JJJ,
Just 5 Js?
yes, 5 J's.
Okay, with necessary corrections. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. There's a motion on the floor in a second. Time to discuss. I'll go first. I don't know if anybody else has any.
Go ahead.
On policy JBAB, which is the student gender and orientation, page 3.
JBAB.
JBAB, student gender and orientation, page 3.
Mm-hmm.
And the first italic says locker rooms. Are you all there?
Yes, ma'am.
If we can just put a period at the end of process where it says that last, see that? Okay.
Correct.
And, let's see. Gotta go back to my notes. Okay, and, okay, we took care of that one. If we can go to the policy, JIAA-R, JIAA-R, sexual harassment and retaliation, students, in parentheses, page 4. JIAA-R, sexual harassment and retaliation, students is in parentheses, and it's page 4.
Got it.
You got it?
Students.
If you go down under the italics that says towards the 3/4 ways down, determination of responsibility, that italicized piece of it in the second paragraph that starts with the federal programs director, in the second sentence where it says that we allow each party 10 business days, according to my notes, it said 15. The committee said 15.
It should be
Do y'all recall, it should be 15?
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to make that note. Okay? Next policy is JICA, which is student dress. JICA, if we can just take out that italicized that says at the beginning of a parenthesis, optional, blah, 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 that just needs to be deleted. The next one is policy JJI, which is Interscholastic Athletics. JJI, Interscholastic Athletics. Bless you. We all there?
Yep.
JJI.
Okay, did you, all right, Mayor?
JJI, Interscholastic Athletics. Go down to the bold where it says middle school participation and go down to the second bullet that starts with to participate during the second semester. Where it says a student must be passing 2 or 4 core, C-O-R-E. And then, it should read 2 or 4 core course subjects or core course subject courses. I don't know how we want to do that. I just know that words need to be C-O-R-E.
Core subject courses.
And we were supposed to end it at the end of math. So what was in parentheses of the second semester, 9th grade, blah, 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 that was deleted according to the committee. We just put a period at the end of math. We all strike it, yeah, we strike it. The next one, and I think it's the last one that I have, which is JRA-R, Student Records, page 6. JRA-R, Student Records, page 6. JRA-R, Student Records, page 6. Under destruction of educational records, the committee said that before we start that first sentence that says the district may destroy, we said that we would put the district will adhere to all state and federal laws regarding record retention, and then we were going to start that sentence. That's all I have. You guys have anything else, let me know. Any other discussion?
Have one question about, I guess it's for JFB, for school choice.
JFB,
Yes.
okay. Mm-hmm.
Get back. Just saying, so is this pertaining to dangerous schooling at I'm sorry, I guess I was just confused if this was to like, also include like anything else regarding school choice, or is it just about consistently dangerous schools?
This isn't just regarding dangerous schools, because if you need an individually dangerous school for the state, yes.
Okay.
It's specific to that.
Mm-hmm.
Have we set up our fee for out-of-district students?
I don't know if we revisited that yet as a board or not.
We have that, with the first reading of these policies tonight, I'd ask, Ms. Walker to entertain us bringing that to the board,
Thursday?
Thursday night or at our next scheduled board meeting, because we've got to know by August, so we got to know what to charge parents.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the next scheduled board meeting is not until the 11th of July. Is that too late?
I don't think so, because the tuition is due prior to the start of school, so that gives them all the way to August 15th, 16th, for us to notify parents to get that.
Okay, about a month.
the problem is the packet that we had, for out-of-district request and a little handbook, we're in the process of revising that, and putting all our new district logo, title, school title and all that. So we'll bring the whole packet to the board for proposal and ask the board to vote on that.
Okay. All right, board members, we have a motion on the floor in a second. We've discussed this. Is there any further discussion on the proposed J policy that's been proposed to the board? Not in your favor of accepting this as the first reading of section J, please signal by saying aye. Aye. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, the ayes have it and the motion carries. And we are now down to item number 8, which is discussion of the budget. But before we move into that, can you give us just a moment to house clean our paperwork up here? Because we've got some stuff that I need to rebind and say that. Beverly's over here telling me an eye is bigger than J.
She used to eye bigger than James Brown, Dr. Brown.
J was the biggest one.
It's about the same size. Those are the two
About the
largest
same.
sections.
So I just have to do a little bit more proofing. She is looking at us like, what are they doing?
No, I would, well, up here, I've got our committee section, and then I've got the next section that was sent.
And let me say, Ms. Walker, thank you for doing that, because it was so much from the community to remember and to catch, so it was very easy for us. Obviously, we overlooked some things, so thank you so much.
That is okay.
That helps.
It's always, well, you know, we go through the stuff and we have lots of eyes on it, but, you know, we go through it, you know, the first time, we're looking at it, the second time, we're looking at it, the third time. We're all human. That's the way I see it. Okay, so that's B, that's J. Okay, I think I'm ready for you now.
You ready?
Is everybody else ready? We ready, okay?
Okay. So we're back to the budget. The governor, I don't know if he's finished his details or not. Everybody's concerned about elections and runoffs, that I think the budget's just kind of taking a backseat to everything.
Yeah.
At the last meeting, I was asked to contact Betsy Carpenter about the question on equalizing salaries.
Mm-hmm.
And your first thing in your packet is her response.
Mm-hmm.
And it says that the board is the boss. The board can decide the salaries of all employees and delegate that authorization to the superintendent by policy. So the short answer is no, you are not required to equalize all salaries. She did note that in another district, they were gonna equalize to the highest. And then some people got there became some problems of feelings getting hurt. So, you know, just be careful if that's the route we can take. I'm not gonna name all that she said in here because I don't wanna name districts, because that's gonna be right. So, just to be careful
Yeah,
with what we decide to do.
okay.
Okay. The second page, and I don't know how you wanna do the rest of this, because the second page in your packet is also what was requested of me to do. And it has, it's by position. So it lists each position, their degree level. It's the base pay,
Let me stop you.
I figured you wanted to
Okay,
go
I'm
into
sorry.
executive session.
I need to stop you because that is executive session pieces of what needs to be discussed. We've got particulars and specifics on employees, so we can't do that at this time. What we can do, you did share with us what Betsy Carpentier said, and we have that in front of us. The information that you want to discuss needs to be discussed in executive session because it does deal with personnel. So let's, if it pleases the board, it's about time for us to move into executive session. We can discuss this information, then we can come out and do the first reading of the budget, if that's what pleases the board, okay? So at this time, we will, let me get my agenda here. We're going to move down to item number 9, which is executive session to discuss personnel. It does deal with the budget, but it specifically deals with personnel names and matters. So I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session.
Madam Chairman, I move that we go into executive session.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
A motion on the floor and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, if you're in favor of moving into executive session, please signal by saying aye. Aye. Hearing no opposition, the ayes have it. We will move into executive session to discuss personnel, which does have budget information, but it deals with personnel, and that's what we will move into executive session to discuss. All right, board members, I'll entertain a motion to come out of executive session.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I make a motion that we leave executive session and return to open session at this time.
We have a motion on the floor and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. If you're in favor of coming out of executive session, moving back into open, please signal by saying aye. Aye. Hearing no opposition, the ayes have it. We are now back in open session. What is the pleasure of the board moving forward with regards to the budget?
Madam Chairman, I move that we approve the second reading of the 2022-2023 budget.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion on the floor and second. Any discussion? Hearing none. If you're in favor of this, please signal by saying aye. Aye. Any opposition? Hearing none, the ayes have it, and the motion carries. We are now down to item number 11, which is to adjourn the meeting. I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
at this time I'll make a motion that we adjourn this meeting.
All right, we have a motion that we adjourn the meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion on the floor and second. Any discussion? Hearing none, if you're in favor, please signal by saying aye. Aye. Hearing no opposition, the ayes have it, and the meeting is adjourned.